Three families are thrown into chaos when the dead mysteriously awaken and their deceased loved ones return to them. It was just a normal day for everyone. Everybody was going about their day. Some were keeping themselves busy to forget how much they missed the loved ones they lost, and some were still grieving. One day, something strange happened to the whole city. Car horns are blowing by themselves. A huge swarm of birds is acting weird, and lights are flickering before everything blacks out. The network distributor was unable to find any faults in their system, and the reason for the sudden power outage was uncertain. Meanwhile, an old man named Mailer was visiting the grave of Elias, his deceased grandson, when he suddenly fainted due to a deafening sound that was heard right before the power outage. He regained consciousness and found himself laying on top of the grave, hearing a knock coming from it. He hurriedly dug the grave and opened the coffin where his grandson had awakened from being dead. Elizabeth, an elderly woman, was sleeping when she was woken up by a noise coming from somewhere in the house. She cautiously checked where the noise was coming from and found her supposedly deceased lover, Tora, who just got buried that same day, at the kitchen. Meanwhile, a man named David Zetterberg, whose wife Eva just died due to a car accident, was surprised when Eva suddenly started breathing hours after she died. Even the doctor herself couldn't explain how it was possible for someone who had been dead for hours to just suddenly come back to life. Moreover, Eva's heart was beating so slowly and her oxygen level was too low. It was a wonder how she was even alive at all. David went back home to tell their daughter, Flora, about the accident, and when asked if Eva survived, David didn't know how to answer as he himself was still boggled by Eva coming back to life. Flora, anxious about her mother's condition, went to seek some comfort from her boyfriend. Mahler, on the other hand, didn't care, nor did he bother to question the strange events that were happening right before his eyes. He brought his undead grandson, Elias, back home and took care of him like he was never dead at all. Mahler bathed Elias and tucked him to bed, singing him a lullaby to help him sleep. When his daughter Anna, the mother of his grandson, came back home and found her son on the bed, she thought that her father had gone mad and brought her deceased son's body back home. She wrapped plastic around her head in an attempt to end her misery, but Mahler saved her and explained to her what happened. The next day, Anna went straight to her son's room as soon as she woke up and cried as she stared at Elias' sleeping form, snoring and breathing slowly. Despite knowing that Elias had come back to life, Anna was still stunned when Elias opened his eyes, not believing that she had been given another chance to be with her son. She sat on the living room couch to talk to her father about bringing Elias to the hospital to be examined. She wanted to learn what exactly was happening and how it was possible for a dead person to come back to life. But Mahler's father refused, only wanting Elias to remain at home as he was afraid of losing him again. Suddenly, a knock on the door was heard, and they learned that it was the police looking for Elias. Anna stood up so she could open the door, but Mahler stopped her, asking her what she was doing. Anna answered that the police needed to know that they had Elias, but Mahler berated her in a hushed voice. Mahler claimed that if they told the police that they had Elias, then they would surely take Elias from them again, and they both didn't want that to happen. So Mahler insisted on leaving the city so they could live peacefully with Elias. A phenomenon occurred as there were more of the dead that came back to life. News about a strange event happening spread, but no further information about it was said, and a lot of people still remained clueless about what was happening. Some of the undead were brought to the hospital to be examined. Elizabeth took care of her lover, bathing her and giving her a makeover to make her look more alive. She tried to feed Tora when the latter suddenly snapped at her, roughly grabbing the food with her mouth. Elizabeth watched in confusion and fear as Tora walked away, still staring into nothing. The next day, Elizabeth spent the whole day with Tora, who, just like Elias, remained unresponsive. Elizabeth didn't care that it was only her doing all the talking, as she romantically danced with Tora in her arms. When night came, Elizabeth laid beside Tora, holding her hand as she fell asleep with Tora's eyes remaining wide open. Anna and Mahler took a boat and reached their cabin, located on a remote island. While Mahler was cleaning the house, Anna was taking care of Elias, sitting him up and allowing him to drink some juice. Anna stared at Elias in confusion when he made a noise. However, he was too weak to move or even talk, so she was unable to understand what he was trying to say. A while later, Anna woke up from her sleep to check on Elias. She was staring at him and caring for his small face when she felt something wet on his blanket. She checked to find that his shirt was wet, and when she smelled the shirt, she realized that it was the juice she let him drink earlier, and she was confused as she didn't remember spilling some on Elias' shirt. David sat on the dining table, calling the hospital to get an update about Eva. He requested to speak to the doctor in charge of his wife, but the request was declined. David was frustrated when the call suddenly ended and none of his questions about Eva's condition were answered. He talked to Flora about it, and both of them were extremely worried. Flora wanted her mom to come back home already, but with the strangeness of Eva's condition, they doubted that would happen soon. Flora updated her boyfriend about her mother, and the young man tried to comfort her as much as he could. The couple went under a bridge, and Flora watched her boyfriend feed the ducks as she still worried over her mother. Back at home, she watched her father gift her younger brother, Kian, a rabbit, as it was his birthday. The three of them decided to celebrate with Eva at the hospital so they would be complete. However, the mood was killed when they saw Eva sitting on her bed, staring into nothing, and not responding when David tried to talk with her. Kian cautiously approached his mother and showed her the rabbit David had gifted him. Eva's fingers moved as if wanting to hold the rabbit, and when David saw it, he gently held her hands and lifted them up. Kian then put the rabbit in his mother's hands. The trio watched in anticipation as Eva continued lifting the rabbit up on her own, hoping that it meant Eva was slowly getting better. However, the rabbit suddenly started struggling in Eva's grasps, and it was only when it started squealing that they realized Eva was squeezing it rather roughly. Kian slowly backed away in fear as David held Eva's hands, trying to pry them off to get the rabbit from her. But Eva's grip was strong, and they watched as the rabbit eventually quietened down and stopped squirming, its blood dripping on the cold floor. The trio left Eva's room, and in the elevator, Flora mumbled under her breath that her mother was dead. Kian put his dead rabbit in a box and went to the woods to bury it. After burying the rabbit, Kian played his trumpet as farewell music for the poor animal. Nothing had changed for the family even when Eva came back alive. Her old self was gone, and her family was still mourning the loss of a wife and a mother. In Elizabeth's home, Tora sat on the ground with her back against the wall. Inside the room behind her was a dead Elizabeth with a chunk of her face bitten off. The situation was the same for Anna at the cabin. Anna was swimming while her father had gone to the city to get some things he needed. After swimming, she went back inside the cabin and closed all the windows to prevent the flies from coming in and buzzing around Elias. As she was closing the last window, she caught sight of someone approaching their window and immediately locked the window. She carried Elias and backed away from the window as an undead man approached, pushing on the window. Anna stayed inside with Elias in her arms until Mahler came back home with 2 gallons of gasoline. He entered through the back door, and Anna silently showed him the undead man still standing outside. Anna was surprised when Mahler unexpectedly marched outside, hastily approaching the undead man to kill him. However, he ended up being the one to die, and Anna watched as the undead man feasted on her father. While the undead man was busy eating Mahler, Anna seized the opportunity to escape with Elias. She hurriedly went to the small boat and looked back when Elias suddenly bit her shoulder. She stared at him for a while, realizing that her son was exactly the same as the undead man eating her father, but still left with Elias nonetheless. She rowed the boat away from the island as the undead man slowly tried to follow her. She stopped in the middle of nowhere and held Elias in her arms for a while. She whispered sweet nothings and repeatedly told Elias how much she loved him before gently putting him into the water, looking up at the sky so she wouldn't have to watch her son's body submerge into the bottom of the sea.